All right, so in this lesson, I wanted to show you another alternative way that we could have done a little bit of the deleting, and not so much the deleting, but the part here where we're trying to get our hands on the file names of the people who are flagged for deletion, okay? So currently, in the code, we were just doing that by querying for all of the people by their IDs. We get back a collection, essentially we're an iterable of people, and then we extract out just their file names by using the Streams API. However, I want to point out something. Hypothetically speaking, if we had an application that allowed users to select, let's say, hundreds of thousands of people to be deleted out of millions of records, then this approach where we are querying the database to pull back all of that record data, like everything there for each of those people records, just so that we can get the file name and then delete them, that would be a very expensive call to make for very little data that we actually are needing, right? So I want to show you perhaps a more efficient way that you could do that, and also introduce you to a little bit more of the power of the Spring Data framework, okay? So what we're going to do is jump into the person repository. All right, so here we are in the person repository. And remember now, this is actually just an interface. It's not even a class, right? Because Spring Data is actually generating all of our CRUD methods for us off of this CRUD repository interface here, okay? We're not exactly inheriting them. Spring Data is actually generating them, okay? So this CRUD repository is also just an interface. There is no implementation code inside of that interface, okay? That code is being generated at runtime by magical processes that I won't be teaching in this course. All right. However, we can introduce our own methods to this interface and have them still be magically implemented by Spring Data. I mean, Spring Data is just crazy. It's just crazy what it can do, okay? So let me show you how we could do that. So let's say that we want to query the database for not all of the columns of the people, but just the photo file name column of all the people whose IDs match those IDs that we were, passed in from the controller. Let's say that that's what we want, okay? So first off, I want to show you, let's see here. Let me open up the console. So I want to show you a nice little bit of functionality that Spring is making available to us. And maybe the easiest way for me to do this is to, let me clear out this console, all right? And then I'm going to restart the application. And the reason I'm restarting this is so that I can show you a little bit of the startup information here, okay? So when the Spring application starts up, first off, it has that neat little banner there. And by the way, you can actually change that banner to say things. We won't be doing that here, but you can change that to say whatever you want. And you can do this ASCII art and all. ASCII art, that's what this is called. But what I want to show you is this little reference right here, H2 console. So as you may recall, we are currently using the H2 embedded database to store our data, okay? Well, one really cool thing that Spring Boot is doing for us is it actually gives us easy access to a web-based database client like Squirrel. Remember Squirrel? That we can use to connect to our H2 database. I mean, again, this is slightly crazy that they've done this. So what we need to do here is I'm going to copy this JDBC URL, and that's our URL. So you could get it from here, or you could get it from the application properties file, right? And then I'm going to come over here to the browser, and I'm going to open up a new tab and navigate to localhost:8080/ and then I'm going to pay attention to this little bit right here, /h2-console. So /h2-console, like so. Enter. And look at that. There's like this other little program running inside of our process that we didn't write, okay? So we're getting this functionality for free because Spring Boot is just that good. Really, what Spring Boot has done is it has exposed functionality that H2 has embedded inside of its own jar file, okay? So the library for H2 is a jar file, and it contains a lot of functionality just inside of itself. And some of that functionality is this little simple web application. Actually, I don't know that I would say that it's all that simple, to be honest with you, okay? And then what you might want to do if you don't already have it filled in is you would select this JDBC URL here, and then you would paste in your URL like I have done right there. And we are not currently using a username or password, so I will clear those fields out and then connect. And so now I am connected to the database. And so here's our person table right there. Okay, so there's the table, and I can click on that and select data from it. So I'm just going to run that. And all I did was just click on that, and that caused this select query to be generated. And then I can run that. And look at that. There's the data, right? So there are our records. So what's nice about this is that I can just kind of confirm what the names of the columns are and everything, and just make sure that I have a decent understanding of the underlying structure of my database, right? That's what I can do here. Plus, I can also play with this data, right? I can do all the general types of things that we did in Squirrel, we could do here as well, very, very easily. So that's kind of nice, I think. All right, so mostly I just wanted to show you that this exists because it's crazy. All right, so let me put that back. And so now, if we wanted, well, in fact, you know what, here, let's just do this. So let's say that we wanted to write a query that would only return back the photo file names, right? So we were going to select the photo underscore file name. Notice now I'm only using all lowercase because it really doesn't matter. In the database section, though, I was pretty consistent about always typing everything in uppercase. I'm just showing you that it doesn't actually matter. I usually have a preference of all uppercase though, but I won't do it that way for right now. Let's just mix things up a little bit. So select photo file name from person where ID in, and then I can pass in some IDs. So I could say something like 2, 11, and 28, okay? And so I'm going to run just that one line. And there we go. So those are just the photo file names. And I've got 2 nulls there because apparently 2 of those records just didn't have any data. So let me look at that data again. Yeah, so I chose 2 and 11, which both happen not to have any data for the photo file name field, right? But this is a query that we could basically utilize to only obtain the file name and not all the rest of this, which is a little more expensive, right? So let me show you now how we could come over here and introduce a new method. So let's see, we'll make it public, and we can say that this will return a set of strings. And I could make this anything. I can make it iterables or collections. It doesn't really matter all that much. Set of strings, and we will call it find file names by IDs. And then we will pass in our, what was it? I think it was was it an iterable? I think it was an iterable of longs IDs. Okay, so here's the trick. So the CRUD repository that we're inheriting from can't do this automatically on its own according to what I have specified here. By default, the inherited CRUD methods that Spring Data is generating for us typically want to return an entire entity, right? The whole entire person, typically. Now, there are some additional techniques where I could extract the equivalent of just this string in an additional way besides what I'm going to show you here, but I'm not a big fan of that technique, and I want to draw back to a little bit of your SQL skills that you learned back in the database section anyway. And honestly, this technique that I'm about to show you is probably the most straightforward way to get what we want anyway. Okay, so what you can do here is I'm going to make a couple spaces here, and then I'm going to introduce an annotation here called query. like so. And then I can specify some parameters. So if I do a Command P here, you can see what some of these parameters are. So first thing I think I'm going to specify is the fact that I want this query to be a native query. So I'm going to set that to true. And that just means that I'm going to be using actual SQL, because there's actually another query language that I could use, which is more object oriented. But since I'm not actually wanting to deal specifically with objects in this particular case, and again, I want you to just get a chance to utilize your SQL skills a little bit, I will specify that this query will be done in native SQL. In this particular case, okay? So I'm setting that to true, and then I will set the value equal to, and then I will just use this query. So I will come over here and actually just copy that, and then I will paste it right there. And now I'm going to modify it a little bit though. So select photo file name from person where ID in. Now I don't want to actually pass in any numbers here specifically. I want this to be parameterized, okay? And so what I can do here is just say something like :IDS for IDs, okay? So I'm parameterizing what IDs I want to use in my in clause there. And then down here, I can bind this variable to this variable here. So very similarly to what we do in the controller methods, right? So there's an annotation called @param, and I will need to import that. And I will need to specify the name of this parameter here, okay? So it is IDS, all right? So I'm binding the IDs parameter here to whatever value I passed in here, like so. And that's it. So that is a way that I can add custom methods to my repository class using just plain old regular SQL. So then if I go back over to the person service now and go into the delete method, let's modify this now to do this a little bit differently. So we did all of this code so that we could obtain a collection of strings, which were the file names, right? But I'm going to comment all of that out now, and then I'm going to make a new line, and now I'm going to call person repository dot find file names by IDs, and I'm going to pass in the IDs. Okay, and I guess, let's see, our IDs are iterables. What did I say this would be? I probably made the data type wrong. Oh, iterator. Okay, so let me make that iterable. Sorry about that. There we go. And I will clean up my imports also. So iterable of long. Sorry about that. There we go. And then capture the output of this into the variable file names. And now look at that. And so look at how much more concise the code is, as well as the functionality itself, right? Because now we can kind of skip past all of that nonsense and just grab these file names. Hopefully this all works. All right, so now let's see, let's reload everything and just see if it does work. So I'm just going to rebuild the entire project. All right, and jump back over here. Let me reload this, and let's create a few of those people again, shall we? So I'll start at the, I don't know, let's do Jimmy Furman again. Jimmy Furman 1/1/2001 jfirm at people.com. I don't remember, 50,000. And let's save. Okay, so there's Jimmy Furman, and let's add one more. And let's see, who did we do? Joseph Gonzalez. Joseph Gonzalez. 2002. J Gons, and 80,000. Return. Okay, so there's Joseph Gonzalez. Let me clear the console here. And then let's select these two people and delete them. Actually, let me also open up the terminal here, clear that out. All right, so there's Gonzalez, and there's Furman. Okay. All right. So now let's delete them. All right. So they're gone from here. Let me refresh just to really prove it. Yep. They're gone from there. And let me clear this, and they are gone from there. And let's jump back over to the console here. And we should even be able to find our custom queries now. Let's see. Might have to look a while though. Look at that. There's our query right there. Select photo file name from person where ID in blah, blah, blah. And then immediately after that, here we are deleting those two people from the database. So I think that's pretty cool. So I will just say that there are some really awesome techniques that you can do with Spring Data and some of the underlying technologies that are actually helping to implement Spring Data, such as Hibernate, which you've heard me mention before. One of the cool things that you can do in general is in this particular case, we introduced a method and then we just supplied our own SQL for that method. But you can also create custom methods and not supply your own query for it. And Spring Data will figure out what you want it to do based on how you named the method itself. So in other words, when you say things like find, for example, or get, Spring Data knows that find or get probably should mean that you're doing a select query. So it'll use the select keyword there. And then if you say something like find all by ID, it will know that you're planning to pass in an ID. And so it will add in a where clause against the ID property. So it's like incredibly smart, okay? However, I did not use that functionality here because like I said before, by default, Spring Data assumes pretty much that you're wanting to return the entire record. And that's the thing that we didn't want to do, right? We just wanted to get our hands specifically on one property or one field of the record, okay? And so I think the easiest thing to do in this particular case was just to supply our own SQL as we did here. Okay, but I just wanted you to be aware that there is absolutely a ton of power in the Spring Data framework to do all sorts of things, okay? All right, so I think that's all I wanted to cover in this lesson, and we're really getting close to the end of everything here, but I do have a couple more things that I want to show you before we just close out the entire course, okay? So join me for the next few lessons and you'll learn some more cool stuff, okay? I'll see you there. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content and you'd like to help me out, there are several ways you could do that. First, you can always click the like and subscribe. That'll help me out a lot. Additionally, another way you can help me out is to check the link in the description below. That'll link you to my website where you can find additional courses. And finally, for those of you who might be interested in starting a new career as a professional software developer, I offer a free PDF guide that will detail exactly how you can get started in this field with no college degree and no prior experience. All you need to do is click on the link in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.